What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here, and this is the Blacklist, Season 8, Episode 10, Dr. Laken Perillos. Not too bad of an episode. We're just kind of getting to see what type of person Townsend is, basically the resources he has at hand. Is kind of what this episode is, I feel like, starting to show. Which, of course, does, again, raise up the problem that Elizabeth is willing to work with him to begin with, especially, whenever Dembe got taken. I'm thinking, yeah, Liz should not be okay with this at all. And yet, whether Townsend is doing this behind her back or not, I guess we'll never know. And I'm assuming, again, that Megan Boone was not available for these episodes, so they just basically made Townsend the focus for now. But yeah, it kind of goes to show again how dumb Elizabeth is being right now, because, I mean, she surely would not want Dembe to be hurt, and yet Townsend did, and I'm sure she's going to be okay with that, and she should not be okay with that. So a little frustrating there, but outside of that, though, this episode was pretty interesting. Getting to see this really disturbed doctor who's willing to put all these people through this pain because she wants to find a way to make it where people don't feel pain anymore. And you could take that as one of two different bad interpretations. Either the one that Red was talking about, where without the pain you don't have the happiness, and that's been done quite a bit. One of my personal favorite game series, Persona 5 Royal, really touched on that. The idea of basically taking away any hurt, any pain, anything that upsets you, how detrimental that can be. Because if it's all good all the time, you don't know what it's like to be good, because there's no bad to compare it to. So that was Red's interpretation. I also took it of the interpretation of scientific, literally. If you don't have any pain, if you're not feeling anything in your pain receptors, you don't know when you're putting yourself in danger. That's one of the things that pain is there to do. And that's why, there have been stories of people who don't feel pain, who have had these awful injuries that they didn't even know they had because their pain receptors don't work. And so it's kind of a dangerous thing to have. So either way, no matter which way you look at it, it's definitely not a good idea. But she is so... I'm guessing she fears pain so much that she just wants to get rid of it. Which is why she was willing to turn on Townsend despite the threat of pain. She probably didn't want it. Not to mention, this whole idea... It was a little heavy-handed, this whole, oh yes, white people don't understand black people's pain and all of that stuff. A little heavy-handed, and I don't know if they're trying to stand up on a pedestal for this episode about that. I'm sure there's probably a real-life story that's based on, what she was talking about with the white doctors judging between the different pains and stuff like that. But I don't know, it's just, I feel like we've come kind of a long way from that point, I would hope. Who knows, maybe they've done some scientific studies, maybe on average that's how it is, but that's not, of course, everybody. Or maybe they just, again, based on a control group that didn't represent everybody very well. Science is messy like that. It does make a lot of mistakes because sometimes you don't do a good job of making the tests represent what your outcome. You don't make it represent it very well. So you take the findings, you say, hey, this is what I found, and then people go and disprove that because your study that you did wasn't handled very well. One of the best examples I can think of, I've just heard this story told before, where somebody was talking about, trying to make it legal to smoke at a college, and so they went and they asked around. They found out that 80% of the students smoked. Problem is they asked all these questions around a smoking area at the school, so of course their results are going to be skewed. That's just one for me that I'm just like, yeah, whenever you hear studies are done, whenever you hear scientists come out and say, here's what I found, realize that that's not always accurate. Realize that there is a lot of room for error in experiments and stuff. But yeah, going back to the doctor though, she really hammered that in several times. I kind of wish they had done it more from like basically somebody who's following somebody else. Dembe following Reddington, she's following Townsend's orders. Reddington really does seem to care about Dembe, and he does care about everybody that works for him. He's just willing, if they do betray him, he's willing to show, hey, don't betray me, and here's why. He does make examples out of people. Whereas Townsend, it feels like, if any, obviously we saw what happened with his sister. She got captured by the FBI. He went and sent somebody to kill her to make sure she didn't talk. That's kind of the difference between Reddington and Townsend. And if that was more the focus of it, I feel like I would have found it a lot more interesting and engaging. But because they were focused more on the idea of a black person working for a white person, that was their main focus. It just felt very, again, heavy-handed and really hammering a point home that I feel like a majority of the people watching your show probably already know that there's no difference between skin colors. Everybody's different. Everybody has different pain tolerances and stuff. Your color of your skin does not determine that. I feel like most people know that. And if they don't, then they're probably the people that are going to be complaining about your show for that reason. But all that being said, though, this episode still was very engaging, and it's really nice whenever Dembe gets a chance to shine, because he is a great character. So whenever he gets a moment, Reddington's in danger, and he gets the chance to step up and work with the team, work directly with the FBI, and be like, let's find him, we need to find him. Those episodes always get me excited, because I enjoy seeing Dembe just go off and have so many great moments. The moment, whenever he sees the doctor, after he goes and saves Reddington, and he basically just asks, what all did you do to him? And then she's now on the table, and it's like, why he just asked what she did to him. But yeah, so all in all, it was a pretty good episode. The less that they focus on Elizabeth, I feel like the better at this point, because just Reddington and Townsend going head-to-head is a very intriguing prospect, and one that I figured we would see eventually. Again, the way we got here, Elizabeth deciding to team up with Townsend to try to get to Reddington, that part was very weak. But Townsend himself does seem like a very good adversary for Reddington. It does feel also like the tide is shifting a bit for Reddington, because most of the time his people are very loyal to him no matter what. It takes a lot for them to want to turn on him. What we saw in this episode, Rudiger, clearly he fears what Townsend will do more than he fears Reddington, and he was willing to flip on him because of that. So I do think we'll maybe start to see some allegiances get flipped a little bit, as Townsend makes himself more of a presence and more of a threat to Reddington. But we'll see what happens next. It's a pretty good start to what has been, not a great season so far. It's good to start off one of these reviews with an exciting episode, and one that I actually enjoyed. So, on to the next episode. I'll see you there. And now, episode 11, Captain Kidd. So, another very interesting one, and again, a lot of that is just down to the fact that we're not focusing as much on Elizabeth versus Red, and we're starting to focus a bit more on Townsend versus Red, and I feel like that's a good step to take away from what, in my opinion, is just a not great story, because again, I don't think they did a good job writing Elizabeth toward the end of last season and the beginning of this one. So I'm glad that we're taking our focus away from that. And also, we're getting a bit more focus on Harold in Red, and I'm enjoying some of those scenes. Obviously, I don't enjoy the decision Cooper made in this episode, we gotta stand by Elizabeth, because I realize you don't trust Reddington. He is lying to you about this stuff. However, in all the time that you've worked with him, you know who he is. You know what he's capable of and what he's not capable of. Townsend is definitely the worser between the two. And yet, they're going to side with Elizabeth, who's siding with Townsend. Now, in saying that, I realize he's more so thinking we need to go get Elizabeth so we can get her away from Townsend and basically save her from herself type of situation. But it still feels like the best way to do that is to team with Reddington and work with him to get her back from Townsend, because he's the best shot you have of getting her back. And maybe, Captain Kidd being taken away, it was kind of a wake-up call. I think Dembe sort of showed, well, he told Reddington, I don't know if Reddington's going to actually listen to him in this case, but it was a good line from Dembe, basically saying, both of you tried to do what you do to get to Townsend, and neither of you got anything more, and you lost Captain Kidd in the process. it's a very poignant line, and I hope Reddington takes it to heart, and maybe Cooper will see that as well because of what happened. But it's something that I hope they start to do as we get towards the second half of this season, because I'm pretty sure. Let's check real quick. Yeah, so we're basically at the halfway point. So I'm assuming either next episode or the episode after would have been or will be the mid-season finale, and it would have been like episode 12 or episode 10 if we didn't have like the first two episodes that were probably supposed to be at the end of last season. So I think it'll still work out in that way. So in that regard, I feel like they're doing a pretty good job of keeping things pretty on point as far as the episode writing and how things play out. But yeah, I really do think that would be a good setup for the second half of the season, though, if assuming this is the next or the mid-season finale, it would be kind of like a moment where the team in Reddington finally realize we have a shared goal. You know, we both want Liz to not be working with Townsend. We both want to save her. So how about we put our differences aside for now? You know, not necessarily full trust, not necessarily like, oh yeah, you're an okay person now, but at least putting our differences aside, agreeing to work together, agreeing to share information, and hopefully Reddington actually agrees to it, and he doesn't, oh yeah, no, sure, I'll do it, and then continues to do his own thing, because I think he should realize that Townsend is an opponent that he's not going to really be able to go up against and succeed on his own. At least that's what I'm gathering from all of what we've seen so far. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they decide to do with Reddington and the team from here on out. As far as the friend in Moscow, I'm beginning to suspect that maybe this guy that we're seeing talking to Rakitin Andrew at the end of this episode, I'm beginning to think maybe he's the true N13. Obviously, he has much more nefarious goals than Reddington does. He's willing to take out Cooper, which of course Reddington, doesn't. Cooper's his friend. He doesn't want him to be taken out. So he definitely seems much more evil between the two. But I'm wondering if he's actually the Russian spy in 13. But if that is the case, then what is Reddington's connection to him? I don't know for sure. And it does make me wonder what the next step is going to be for this whole thing. Obviously, Rakitin's going to be coming after Cooper. I'm sure Reddington's probably, whether he finds out or whether he doesn't, I'm sure that's going to be his moment to finally realize he has to step in and do something about it. But it does make me wonder more about who this guy is, how he's connected to Reddington, what all of this is. Because obviously we don't know anything about him. We just know he's the friend in the East that Reddington keeps referring to. And he's clearly willing to do whatever it takes to make sure his secret doesn't get exposed. So, yeah, it's a pretty good setup. And, again, we're taking steps in the right direction. We're actually moving it forward a little bit. We're not focusing on the dumbassery with Elizabeth as much anymore. Pretty good. As far as the Captain Kidd case in this episode goes, and, this woman, I'll admit, it did make me chuckle a little bit, because, of course, they heaped praise on this woman for what she's doing, and yeah, it is great to see people standing up and trying to save lives, but having her become just like this badass at the end of the episode and take down 4 guys with guns trained on her, I don't know, there was something about that I'm like, okay, like, you could have just had the team save her, and that would have been like, yeah, we saved this woman who's incredible. But to have her take down 4 armed gunmen was just like, okay, now you're... trying to think of like a good example. It's one of those, you're taking somebody who's supposed to be the face of representation. She's saving women and LGBTQ people who are being exterminated in these other countries. You're taking that symbol and you're basically heightening it even more. It's like, no, she's not just doing that. She's also a badass. I don't know, something was funny about it, because she is kind of smaller and a little bit more petite, so for her to take down these guys was just like, she doesn't look like she could handle herself in a fight. If they cast a woman who maybe looked like she had a bit more muscle to her, that would be one thing. But yeah, they cast somebody who she doesn't look like she's ever been in a fight. Like, just, and that's not anything to say like women can't get in fights or anything. Don't take my words out of context. But there is something to be said about if you're gonna cast. It was kind of like when they cast Ruby Rose as Batwoman originally. At first, when we first saw her in the crossover that Batwoman first showed up in, she looked skinny. She was like, my size arms, and I'm thinking she's not gonna hold her own in a fight. Thankfully, it looked like she did, build up a little bit of muscle for the show itself. But yeah, if you're gonna cast somebody who's gonna be in a fight and is gonna be winning a fight, you're gonna have to show us that they have the strength to win that fight. And she did not look like she had the strength to drive a wooden plank through a guy's leg like that. I'm sorry if that's offensive to anybody, but that's just the case of it. They could have gotten somebody in who looked like they could do that. But I don't know. Just it's a small thing, and it's more so just something that made me laugh because I know why they did it. They wanted to really raise her up and show how awesome she is. And it just kind of made me laugh because of it. And then of course have to end on a sour note because our country doesn't even care about these people. We don't care about. Okay, if that's the soapbox you want to stand on, and that's fine. You could preach that stuff. Anyways, I think that's about it for this episode, though. So yeah, on to the final of these three. See you there. And finally, episode 12, Rakitin. So a little unsure of what's gonna happen at the end of this season because thing is, the first part of this season, I'll admit, I was pretty much just kind of thinking I was going to grind through, just sort of finish up the season and gladly move on to the next show. But I will say, these 3 episodes turned it around for me. It's got me excited to see what's going to happen next. It's building up this unknown mystery about who the Russian person is that Reddington's talking to, his friend in the East. Is this guy N13? How is Red connecting to him? What's the end game that he keeps talking about? And I'll admit, it kind of makes me want to keep watching after the season and just finish out the show and see how it all ends. Because I'm not gonna lie, I mean, it would be nice to kind of finish it up, find out the truth, find out everything that's going on. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see how I'm feeling at the end of this season. I may just want to move on to another show and just take a break from this one, come back a bit later. But as far as this episode is concerned, though, it's pretty straightforward. Rakitin kidnaps Cooper. He ends up getting taken in because Reddington helps them find Rakitin. And then basically the rest of the episode is Reddington finding a way to kill Rakitin so that way he doesn't talk and expose whatever master plan is going on in the background. Overall, I mean, it was a good episode. Reddington manipulating Park, and it is kind of funny. He does say it to her straight at the end of this episode. Like, the reason she agreed to help him, or the reason that she wanted him to help her to begin with, is because she didn't want to expose her crime and ruin her career at the FBI and then go to jail. That's why she asked for help to begin with. And now at the end of all this, she's like, that's what I'm going to do anyway. But that's why. That's why you asked him for help in the first place, and you agreed to do what he asked because of that. So I kind of hope that this is the last time he asks Park for help. Because if that's what he does, it very much is like a you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours type of thing. Because I do think that's how Reddington operates, and so I feel like he probably sees her debt as paid because she did this for him. We'll see if that's confirmed or not later on down the line, but I get the feeling, because that's how Reddington is. He doesn't take more than he gets, basically. So I thought that was kind of interesting, and it was also interesting just to see Park, how she reacted to all of this, because obviously this is first time really dealing with Reddington on this level. As far as just everything to do with Rakitin and Cooper and everything going on, I don't know how I feel about all of it, to be honest. I get he trusts Elizabeth. I get he wants Elizabeth to be in the right. He wants to believe in her. But at the same time, I mean, he knows Reddington. He's known him for several years, almost as long as he's known Elizabeth. Sure, he's a criminal, but you know who he is. If he were just a Russian sleeper agent and he were only there just to get information, why would he care so much? Like, unless he's somehow convinced himself that Reddington only is keeping them all there and only wants to keep them alive just so he has a task force to work with that he can keep using them to get information, unless that's how he's justifying it in his mind. But everything we've seen Reddington do from season 1, he seems like he's a criminal, obviously, but he seems like a person who has morals, has a moral code, won't go to a certain point. He's willing to kill to get the job done, but he will not harm innocents. He tries to protect the people that he's close with. You know, he genuinely does care about all these people. And he's helped them so many times. And if he were just a Russian sleeper agent, we would not be seeing him do all of this stuff for them. Like, that would be the longest con game in history. I don't think there were so many moments where he could have just had some people who suspected him, who didn't like him, who was going to be essentially a burden on him. He could have just had them all wiped out anytime he wanted. But he doesn't want that to happen. And you can see so many times, even in this episode, he didn't want to kill Rakitin, but Rakitin forced his hand by going in, you know, obviously his other friend forced his hand as well by telling Rakitin to go kill Cooper. But Reddington only does this stuff when he feels like he's being forced to. When he feels like he can't trust somebody anymore. That's the only time that he feels like he has to kill them. Because if they can't be trusted, if he feels like they're going to turn their back on him, I mean, there's a good chance they could do it again at any point. Like, you know, what we saw with Frankie at the beginning of last season. So, yeah, I don't know. I feel like, again, I'm not saying Cooper is just a good guy, like he's the hero in all of this, but he definitely feels like the person that we should be kind of rooting for. You know, it feels like whatever his mission is, it's very important, and it's gonna be to the benefit of the team, for Elizabeth. Like, he's gonna be helping a lot of people in whatever this mission is. I really hope that's the case, because we find out at the end of all of this, it was just, I don't know, for money or something. Like, I hope they have a good idea of what the end game actually is, and I hope it's a good cause. Because I don't want to feel like, you know, we've been seeing this guy do all of this stuff for the past several years. You know, manipulating all these people, working things around, obviously with a moral code to it all, but he's doing whatever he can to get this job done. I'm hoping there's, like, a good reason at the end of it all, or else it feels like all of this stuff is just, this entire show, honestly, it feels like it would cheapen the whole experience. You know, that's why whenever Liz is going on her crusade, whenever Cooper doesn't trust Reddington, that's why I feel the way that I do. Because I feel like this show has been about Reddington's plan from the beginning, and how Liz is involved, and how, you know, with the task force, he's accomplishing his goals, whatever they are. And if those goals are evil or cheap or just not what they've been building it up to be, because I feel like he's got a plan to take down a bunch of evil people all at once. It was what it seems. I don't know how true that is, but you know, even the fact that they're talking about this Sikorsky archive, I think is what it's called, that is something Townsend wants because he is somebody who's threatened by it, and N13 apparently stole it. And what I don't really understand is they're acting like, oh, well, N13's a bad person then. If he stole this information that has information about bad people on it and is using it, wouldn't that make him not a bad person? You know? Like, when they start talking about that, I was like, okay, so maybe N13, you know, maybe they'll start to realize, oh, wait, so if he's trying to steal this information about people like Townsend, maybe this is a good thing. Maybe something good's going to come out of it. But they act like him stealing it is an evil thing to do. And I don't really understand that. I don't know. We'll see what their plan is. I'm hoping there's a good plan at the end of all of this. It's something that I'm hoping they had in mind at the beginning of the series. You know, when they first started writing it, when they first started bringing all of these characters into it, bringing the idea of Reddington and the Blacklist into it, I'm hoping they already knew what they had to do with it. because if it's something that they're just sort of making it up as they go along, it could feel very much how the whole Ilya Kozlov twist turned out to be, where it felt like, okay, so now we know who he really is, and then the next season's like, psych, because we got another season, we're going to rewrite that, we're going to come up with another reason this guy's actually Ilya Kozlov and Reddington is still somebody else we don't know yet. It feels very pull it out your ass type of situation, where it's like, this is who he is, just kidding, this is who he is, just kidding, we're over here now. I don't want it to be, this is what the Blacklist was supposed to be, if it ended in season 2, but then didn't. So now we got season 3. So now here's what the Blacklist is gonna. Now we're all the way to season 8, 9, 10. We've changed our minds. We have a new idea, and I'm worried that all of that will feel very disconnected and disjointed because the writing would have been very disconnected and disjointed to continue changing from season to season. So we'll see. Like I said, I don't know how they wrote it all. I don't know what the idea was. I am hoping, since the show is called The Blacklist, since it's about Reddington and his blacklist, I'm hoping at least that was known and figured out before writing all of these seasons, so they knew what the end game was. So no matter how many seasons they had, they could at least build to this one moment where we now know what all of this was for. So yeah, we'll see what comes next, but I think that's about it for this episode and these 3 episodes. So let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What were your thoughts on these 3 episodes? Let me know. We can talk about and discuss all that good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe for future Blacklist reviews, and I will see you guys at the next one. Peace out.